Hi everybody, I'm just going to do a short video on books today from the bookshelf. I did a couple before. People seemed to be relatively interested and said that they might actually do their own videos. So I'm doing this partly to inspire you to do your own videos. Yes, it's not vinyl, but I like to do things differently on my channel, just things that I enjoy. Okay, so I'm going to just show a few books, maybe talk about one or two, keep it fairly straightforward, and show you a couple of books that have defeated me. And I hope that maybe you'll do something similar about it. Do what you like. Okay, in the 60s, Penguin released this great series, Penguin Modern Poets. Quite a popular series, nice little paperbacks, lovely designs on the covers. I always like the black. This one's Michael Hamburger on here. I actually knew his daughter. He used to spend his entire days just translating German verse and writing verse himself in this great big pile in the middle of the country. The most famous of all of her books is this one, Penguin Modern Poets 10. It just sold by the bucket load. It's for Mersey Sound. The Americans had beat literature in the 50s and 60s, and it spurned an interest in a kind of subculture. Even over here, there was a small culture of UK jazz, and poetry crossed over into it. And through the 60s, poetry and jazz were almost kind of inseparable in some ways. You had a lot of events which were poetry and jazz. And it was all part of it, because obviously we talk about Liverpool and 1963 and we talk about the Beatles. Liverpool was more than that. And of course, culturally, artistically, etc., a lot of things happened at the same time. It's not just one form of art that creates a movement or a scene. It's all the other things. It's for words, it's for books, it's for poets, it's for writers, etc. It's for artists and painters and sculptors and whatnot, as well as for musicians. And this was so classically of its time. It's not like the beat scene in America, which was far more bleak, and it's a different country and a different world. This has far more kind of humour to it, although they're still dealing with certain social issues. It's a lighter kind of feel. And there was a fun element to it, as well as there was a heaviness and talking about the social change and about skyscrapers, kind of blocks of flats. Well, hardly skyscrapers here, but that kind of the change in society, the change in the culture after the post-war, rebuilding the cities and getting rid of all of the slum elements, which were there pre-war. And there was a change in society, a change in the world, and these people expressed it, but in a very English way. Okay, let's just show a couple of books. This is just a nice little edition of The Christmas Carol from 1951, Charles Dickens. Just flick and have a look at a couple of illustrations. I do like these little kind of pocket books that I carry in my coat sometimes in the winter. You're on the train or you're in a caf or something. Just wonderful things. I'm just going to show a few books here. Just pull a few off. A book on essays, or of essays. Joseph Roth, The Legend of the Holy Drinker. A book on the knight and chivalry. The medieval period has always been a really interesting thing for me. Here's Werner Herzog's Of Walking in Ice. Great little book, that one. Definitely recommend that, bit of a classic. Here's a book on the heart. The Book of the Heart. Louisa Young. Now this covers the anatomy of the heart, the history of the heart in literature, the heart in art. It also talks about heart transplants, and it's really fascinating, because the weird thing is, people who have had heart transplants, strange things happen to them. People who couldn't before could play an instrument after they've had their heart transplanted. They may have completely different tastes. One person in this book, I think it was in this book, talks about, well, they woke up in hospital, and the family who had actually donated the heart, who said, yes, you can have the heart, were there, as well as the family of the loved ones, etc., of the person who'd had the transplant. And the person's first words were swear words. This person never swore, and he started to swear and everything. And they said, oh, that's so-and-so. That's Dave, or whatever his name was. And his character, something within the heart, had transplanted itself. So something residual of his personality had been transplanted. And there are many evidences of people suddenly having completely different tastes. And the person who, before only liked a particular kind of meat or whatever, suddenly this person would have a real craving for that meat or whatever. And they might be vegetarian, It's just something residual staying over. It's a fantastically weird and interesting thing. Of course, it depends on what you believe, etc. You might have beliefs about it. But it is interesting that they still have their own character. So I don't know what happened in their own heart. What happened if their heart goes? How much of themselves is left? I mean, it's strange, but the heart itself, this physical object, has a residual effect of the person, the characters and characteristics of the personality. Amazing. Anyway, great little book, covers all sorts of stuff, as I say. This is something which I wish had never been discontinued, but they stopped making this, publishing it, probably like 15 years ago now. Just like the Record Collector, this was the sister magazine, the Book and Magazine Collector. Fantastic. It went into values and everything, all the stuff. The most beautiful books on earth, this one. And it covers all sorts of different, so lots of colour pictures. It's just a shame that it was discontinued. Here's just a few more. Wide range of writers and subjects. I'll just show you another one or two. That's Joseph Conrad, Colin Watson, Patrick Leigh Fermor, L.T. Mead, Sven Hassel. Anyway, this is a good book. This is Noel Coward's Present Indicative. It's written, this is actually a first edition, 1937. It's written from his diaries, or kind of like, taken from his diaries, perhaps how he wrote it at the time anyway. Very witty, very intelligent, obviously very eloquent, so funny at times, and but so descriptive of the world around him and the world he lived in. And he was obviously hugely famous. He was an actor as well as a playwright and poet and composer and musician, etc. Really hugely popular. But he also talks about what it was like to live in that kind of lifestyle. This is written in 1937, at the height of his powers, if you like, or the 20s were when he really made it big and became a big name. At this point, he was starting to get people, journalists and critics, say negative things about him. But just talking about the stuff he went through, the drama that he went through with the actors, and going through the rigmarole of having to be at all of the different parties. He was ill quite often, and just living that kind of lifestyle relentlessly, and the money he made, but he never lost track of who he was. He came from a very humble beginning. But amazing story, really, really fantastic writing. Highly recommend that. It may not sound interesting, but it really is a fantastic book. All of his books are brilliant. I'm just going to show one or two more. I don't know if I showed a book on beekeeping before, but one day I would like to keep bees. I have a few books on beekeeping. This was just a quick one I pulled up. Now I live in this area, I think it's going to be more possible because there's a lot of farmland around here, and farmers will probably welcome hives. So it may be something. I also have a small walled garden So being walled, that will help. And there's a lot of people who long for bees to come back now, because obviously the numbers have gone way, way down, and there are more drives to get bees back into nature. And a lot of the councils and stuff all around the country are leaving grassland now. Instead of cutting everything back, they're leaving large areas, large patches of land to grow back in a wild kind of fashion, to attract bees and insects and everything back, and to kind of increase their numbers. So one day, perhaps, I always wanted to do that. I'm going to show 2 or 3 books that have defeated me. I may have shown these before, or which I haven't got around to yet, and it'd be good if you could do the same. It'd be fantastic. I'm running on. James Joyce, Ulysses, one of the great unread books of history. You open it up and you think, wow, that's really fantastic. Although there's some sort of strange play sections and stuff, but no. One day maybe. Another one. Every teenage girl has read it. Or, not every, hardly any, in fact, nowadays. But it's one of those books that really should be read. And I open it up and I just think, wow, the language is incredible. You want to read it, but I still haven't got around to it. And it's one of those I know will probably be too harrowing, and perhaps, I don't know. Dear. And I'll show one more. I think I may have shown this before. Under the Volcano, Malcolm Lowry came 11th out of the top 200 novels or 500 novels. Just outside the top 10. And a lot of people struggle with it because there's something about it. It's all in the day, just one day, the Day of Death festival in Mexico. And it's about an ex-consul, ex-husband, an alcoholic and a ruined man is living out the last day of his life. So it sounds really excellent and intriguing, but I think people struggle with it because it's written by an alcoholic. And I think this is it. I suddenly clicked with it. I got it. If you've ever had a really bad night, drunk, or if you've had periods in your life where as a teenager or something you might have got drunk a lot or whatever, you kind of can gauge some of where he's coming from. And that's what it is. This book is kind of saturated with a drunk outlook in a way. It's not something you necessarily pick up, but it's something like, what is it that I'm not getting here? When you get that, it all becomes clear and makes sense. Have I still got past page 110? No, but one day I think I will, because I kind of get it now. I can see it. A lot of people don't get any further than page 20 or 30, but I think it's not reached number 11 in these wonderful lists for no reason, and so perhaps one day. Anyway, there's all sorts of other stuff I'll show. Hopefully that's inspired some of you to do the same, who knows. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you got to this very point, let's do a capital T before the comment. We'll see. Oh, I'll just show one quick book before we go. The Olive Tree. This also is a first edition. This is Aldous Huxley. It's 1937. Chatto and Windus. And it's just a compilation. Oh, it's music everywhere. Of essays on these subjects. Really fantastic to hear his thoughts on the new art degree. People could even do a degree in art nowadays, and just how risible that was. But fantastic, timeless stuff. It doesn't matter that it was written 95 years ago. Just brilliant. Justifications, the English snobbery, just fantastic stuff. Anyway, there you are. This video is what it is. Or was what it was. And maybe I'll do another one, we'll see. Anyway, I'll see you all later.